All right, this is going to be Silly Salmon section 4. I know the last two sections were super crazy long. This one should be a lot shorter than the other two. I'm hoping like maybe half the time of the other ones. Um, so what we're going to do is we are going to add in the rest of the salmon's animation. So what you'll want to do is you can see we have to highlight the salmon, but he's underneath the river right now. So I would just go to the right side in your project window. Let's double click the salmon from there. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our animations here. So what you're going to do is in this window here, you're going to right click and you're just going to add animation, and we're going to do that twice. So just right click the white area and add two animations. And then we're going to rename them. So let's take default. If you right click it, you can rename it. We're going to call this one swimming. Second animation is going to be jump, rename. Third animation is going to be down. Okay, so we have swimming, jump, and down. Um, so now let's go to the swimming here. And what we need to do is we need to import the animation frames. Okay. So what we're going to do is you're going to right click down here and we're going to do import frames. Now, previously we have imported from a sprite strip. A sprite strip is when you have one image that has all the frames on it in one image. For Silly Salmon, we have it set up that all of the images are separate, so each animation is its own picture. So what we have to do is we have to do from files, because we're basically going to be selecting multiple files, okay? So import frames from files. Then you want to find your Silly Salmon folder. So I'm going to jump into that really quick here. Let me see here, and then here. Silly salmon. All right, so once you get into here, you'll go into images. Now, we originally had this salmon here, but now we have a salmon folder that we're going to go into. And you'll see one for down, jumping, and swimming. So let's go into swimming. And you can see there's quite a few frames here. There's 13 of them, okay? We don't want to load them one at a time. That'll take forever. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on the first frame, scroll down to the bottom, hold Shift, and click on the last frame while holding Shift. Now, if you hold shift and it does not select all of these, what that means is you probably pick sprite strip, because if you do a sprite strip, then it only wants you to pick one picture. But if you do from files, then you can do multiple files. So I'm going to click open, and all those frames are going in. Now you can see this first frame looks really weird because it's not the same size as the other ones. So that frame 0, I have to highlight that and press delete on the keyboard and get rid of that. Now all of these are the same size, okay? And you can see the fish is rather big, so we're going to do some tweaks to that as well, okay? Now, what we want to do is we want to crop them all. So to crop every frame at the same time, I'm just going to hold Shift, and while holding Shift, I'm going to press the crop button. And that crops every frame, and now they're all cropped the same way, okay? Then we want to resize them all to 70 by 90. So we're going to click the resize button up here. I'm going to put 70, and then I'm going to put 90. And then you need to make sure apply to whole animation is checked. That means it'll do all the frames at the same time. So I'm going to click OK. And now all of these should be resized the exact same. Okay, and that's what we want. All right, perfect. So next we are going to do the polygon. So if I zoom in a little bit here, the polygon is going to be this one right here. That's the hitbox. That's actually pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click in the middle and I'm going to say guess polygon shape. So it changed a little bit, and then I'm going to right click and apply all. And then they all should have a pretty similar polygon shape. Okay. All right. Then with the swimming animation highlighted, so you're going to have to go up and click on the word swimming here. We are going to change the speed to 14 and we want it to loop. So we're going to turn speed 14 and we want loop on. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and do the jump animation. So go ahead and click on jump. We are going to right click down here and we are going to import frames from files. We are going to go into salmon and then we're going to go into jumping. You're going to click on the first one, hold shift and click the last one. We're going to click open and we're going to delete that frame 0. Okay, and then we have that right there. Perfect. And the frames, the polygons look okay on that one, so we'll just leave that. We are going to change, if you click on the jump animation here, we're just going to change the speed to 8. and we do not want it to loop. Okay, do not put looping on. That would be bad because that way when you jump, he's going to keep just jumping over and over and over again. So yeah, we don't want that one to loop. Um, Now we're going to do the down animation, and we don't have to resize this one. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's already 70 by 90. So the jump, you don't have to do any resizing. So let's go to the down animation, right click, import frames from files, and we are going to go back. So when I go back a folder, you can see I have this little guide up here that shows me where I am in the folder. I'm just clicking back onto Salmon right here, and then I can go back into the swim or to down right here. Okay, and then you're going to highlight the first one, scroll down, hold shift and click the last one. We're going to open. Now this one has quite a few frames, you can see. Delete the frame 0, so highlight it and press delete. Okay. Um, this one we do need to resize, so I'm going to click on frame 0. I'm going to click resize up here. We're going to do 70 by 90. Make sure apply all is checked and click OK. All right, so you got that all resized. Click on the down animation once. We need to change the speed to 12. And we do not want that to loop, so make sure looping is not checked. Okay, and that should be it for the animation, so we should be good to go there. So now we're going to head back into our event sheet, and we're going to get these animations to actually work, and we're going to do a couple tweaks here. All right, so on our event sheet, the first thing we want to do is, if you remember on our game, we need the salmon underneath the river, and the river and the salmon are on the same layer. So we have to make sure we manually tell the salmon to be behind it. So what we're going to do is on start, just to make sure, because like what'll happen is if you do a playthrough, and like what's going to happen is when the salmon jumps, we don't want him under the water anymore. So we're going to basically move him higher up on the layer so he goes above the river. So what could happen is if you jump and he's above the river and the game ends, when you restart the game, he could be above the river, and we don't want that. So on start of layout, we need to move the salmon to the bottom of the layer just to make sure. So we're going to add an action to our on start. We're going to do salmon. And if you just type in move, and then we'll have move to bottom right here in Z order. Okay, that's all we have to do there. Okay, then what we're going to do is when the salmon moves left and right, we're going to change his angle so his body will like lean that way. Now, this is where making comments is really important and being organized. So we know we want to do something when he moves right, so we have to find that. Okay, so we know the movement is under touch control, so I would open that up. And so it's good I have that group because it made it easy to find, right? And then to move right, you might not remember to look for this X diff greater than 0. You might not even remember what that means, but we made a nice comment that says moves right. So I know when I want to find the part that he moves right, I just go to where the comment is. Okay. So this here is what's making him move right. So I'm going to add an action here for the salmon. We're going to set angle. Now, this is not angle of motion. This is just the regular angle. So when you set angle, that means you're physically like rotating the object. When you do angle of motion, that means the bullet direction. So there's a difference there. So here we're just setting angle because we want the body to just tilt as he moves. So we're going to set the angle, and we're going to do 30 degrees. Okay, and we're going to click done. So it should say salmon set angle to 30. Okay, then when he moves left, we're going to set the angle to -30. So here's move left. So I simply could just copy this. So if I just hold control when it's highlighted, I can drag it down like that. And then I just want to change it to -30 because I want his angle to go the opposite way. Okay, then what we need to do is when the salmon stops, we need to set his angle back to 0 so he looks forward again. We don't want him to like lean right and then just sit there always leaning to the right or to the left. So now we have to figure out where he stops. So if you remember, we had some lane marker stuff on here. So if I go down a little bit, um, it's going to be this event right here. And if you wanted to, you could add a comment on this that says stops the salmon or something. So like you can add more comments beyond what I've put on here. Just remember, the comments have nothing to do with how the game actually runs. It's strictly for you as the programmer or for someone else looking at your code. So I would say use as many comments as you feel necessary to help you understand things. Okay. So this is where the salmon stops because his bullet speed is 0. Okay. So then we're just going to add an action here for the salmon, and we're going to set the angle to 0. Okay. So let's test that out quick. I would recommend saving. So you should save often. I'm going to run it. And basically now, When the salmon moves, you can see he like leans a little bit to the left or right, and then he goes back to forward. So that's perfect. That's what we wanted there. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to set the jump animation. So we have to go to where the salmon jumps. Luckily, I have a comment here. This is what makes him jump. Okay, like I said, you might not remember that this y diff less than 0 is the jumping event, but since we have the comment, we're good to go. And here we're setting the text to jump, right? So now we actually don't need that text anymore. So you could just delete this out if you want to, or you can keep it in. It doesn't really matter to me. But on your final game, you probably don't want that text there. So I think what I'm going to do at this point, because we're actually putting the animations in, I think we can just delete this guy out. Um, yeah, you can just go ahead and wipe him off of there because we don't need that anymore because that was just for testing, right? So what we can do is we can wipe this and we can wipe this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add an action here now. And we're going to do salmon and we're going to set animation and we're going to do jump. So remember what I would do is just type a quotation mark and then the jump animation should pop up and then you're going to click done. So set animation to jump. And then what we want to do, like I said earlier, is we want the salmon to go above the river when he jumps. So we're going to add an action for the salmon. We're going to type in move, and we're going to do move to top. That's going to move him to the top of the layer so he'll go above the water. Okay. So obviously we're going to do the same thing on the down. So here's my down. So what I could do is I could just copy these two, or you can retype them in, whatever works. So I just held control and I highlighted each one. And then when they're both highlighted, I hold control again and drag them down to here. Okay, and then this one is going to be animation down. And then I want to move him back to the bottom of layer. So I'm going to say move to bottom. So I just double clicked and edited both of those. So it should look like this. Down is animation down, move to bottom. For jump, animation jump, move to top. I can test it really quick. So now when I jump, you can see he got brighter. Okay. Now there's something else we're gonna have to add here because you can see when I jump, he just stays in that animation. So we're not actually telling him to go back to default. So at some point, we're gonna have to tell him to go back to default. So the down is working as well, but you can see he doesn't actually get back to default. So that's an issue we'll have to fix. So we'll get there in a second. Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some new event to the touch control group to fix that. So I'm going to go to the bottom and you should see this here where it says add event to touch controls. We're going to do that. So go ahead and click that. And basically we're going to say when he finishes those animations that we want him to go back to his swimming animation. So what we're going to do is we are going to do salmon and we're going to go to animations and we're going to go on finished. And then it wants to know the name of the animation. So I'm going to type a quotation mark and we're going to do jump. So basically, we're going to say when he finishes the jump animation, we are going to set his animation back to swimming and make sure he's on the bottom of the layer. So add an action for salmon, set animation to swimming. So type a quotation mark and then double click on swimming. Add action for salmon, and we're going to move to bottom. So move to bottom. Okay, so just like that. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for down. So let's just add another event for salmon. On animation finish, so on finished, we're going to do down. Once again, you could have just copied this and edited it too if that's easier for you. And then we're going to set animation back to swimming. So that's the exact same one. So we'll do this. Now on the down one, we don't have to say move to bottom because the down animation already tells him to move to bottom. So that one we're fine not putting that. So just like that should be okay. Okay. Now what we have to do is the whole idea here is as these obstacles come down, the salmon will be able to dive under some of them and jump over some of them, but not all of them. So what we have to do is we have to be able to tell the game when the salmon is jumping or diving, and we're going to use those as requirements to decide whether he actually gets hit by it or not. So in order to do that, we're going to add some variables on the salmon. So I'm going to single click on the salmon from the project window here on the right. We're going to add a couple of instance variables. So find the blue word instance variables. Okay. And we're going to add a new one. And we're going to make one called jumping. And we're going to make one called diving. So jumping. Now what we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to bools. So instead of a number, now you could program this with numbers, like you could just say 0 is jumping, 1 is not jumping, that would be fine. But we're going to try bools out. So what a Boolean is, and we call it bool for short, basically it's a true-false statement, okay? And for initial value, you basically have it be true or not true. So if this is unchecked, that basically means it's false, okay? And that's what we want. We want it to start as false, okay? Um, so we're going to leave that unchecked. It's jumping and it's a Boolean. Okay, we're going to add another Boolean for diving. So go ahead and just call it diving. And we're going to make it a Boolean and you're going to leave it unchecked. That means false. Okay. Okay, so we're going to use these two variables to basically toggle whether he's jumping or diving. Okay, or if he's not doing either. So now we have that set. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our event sheet. I'm going to minimize the touch controls because I'm done with that for the moment. We'll come back to it. But we're going to make a new group that is for detecting the collisions. So I'm going to right click down here and I'm going to add a group and I'm going to call it obstacle collisions. Okay. And I'm going to add an event to the obstacle collisions. And I'm going to do salmon on collision with another object. And we're going to start by doing the collision with the, basically, we're going to do everything. We're going to kind of combine these. So basically, the outcrop left, the outcrop right, and the island, the salmon is not going to be able to dodge any of those by jumping or diving. You can't jump over an island. You can't go under the island. You can't jump over these mountains, basically, or go under them. So these ones are all going to have the same collision. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say on collision with outcrop left, done. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another condition, and I'm going to say salmon on collision. Actually, it might, no, it won't let me, I think. Oh, okay. So basically, normally what happens when you add a condition in here, it's like an and statement. So if we said this and we add another condition, they would both have to be true. What we're going to do is we're going to do something called an or statement. Basically, we want to say if the salmon collides with the outcrop left or the outcrop right or the island, we want something to happen. So here's how you do that. You right click on the green arrow here and you do make or block. Okay, now when you click it, you won't visually see anything happen. But when you add a condition to this now, it's going to make it an or statement instead of an and statement. So if I right click here, I'm going to add another condition. And now I can do salmon. And I should be able to do on collision with another object again. Yep. And now I'm going to say outcrop right. And now you can see it added this or next to it. So I'm saying if he collides with outcrop left or outcrop right, and we can right click the green arrow and add another condition. And we're going to do salmon on collision with another object. And now we're going to do the island. Okay. So now rather than making 3 different events for each one, since they're all going to do the same thing, we can just combine it with this or statement. So on collision with outcrop left or right or island. Okay. If you aren't able to do this, so the reason why the first time I tried adding a condition, it did not let me do 2 collisions on here because that wouldn't make sense for an and statement. You can't say that I collide with 2 things at the exact same time. So it didn't even give it to me as an option. So I had to make the or block first before it even allowed me to do this. So just a reminder, you just right click and you would want to do make or block, which would be up here. Now the option to make an or an and block went away because the way this is set up, it has to be an or block. Okay. So if I went to a different event, right click, you'll see that make or block. If you see that, you have to make sure you click on that. Okay, so we have that set up there. So then what we're going to do is basically the action here is going to be what happens when the salmon dies or gets hit, right? So the first thing we're going to do, if you remember, everything is controlled. Let me see, what was it under obstacle create? Everything is controlled under this game over variable, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to toggle that variable to 1. So I'm going to add an action here, system, set value. We're going to set game over to 1. Okay, basically game over 1 means that the game has ended. And so that then the obstacle create group, this whole group basically becomes inactive because all of this is under the condition that game over equals 0. Okay, so that's going to make it so obstacles will stop flying at us. Okay, Then what we want to do is um, the salmon right now, basically, if you remember, our salmon actually has bullet behavior, but his speed is 0, so he's just sitting still. He wiggles back and forth from the swimming animation, but he's just a bullet sitting still. So what we're going to do is we want him to fly downward like he gets hit with something. So you can imagine if the island comes and hits him, we want him to get pushed down essentially. So all we're going to do is we're going to give him the same speed as the island, which is the game speed, and we're going to set his angle to 90, which is just going to push him down. So that's what we have to do right here. So what I'm going to do is we are going to do salmon. We are going to set bullet speed. So I'm just going to type in speed. And we're going to make sure we pick the bullet speed, so the one with the bullet symbol next to it. And we're going to set that to game speed. That way it'll match the speed of whatever the island is, because everything is based on game speed. And we're going to add another action for the salmon. And we have to change his angle of motion. So we're going to say bullet angle of motion is going to go to 90. That's going to push him down. Okay. All right, that should work there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the collision with the log, okay? Now, what we have to do is um, the way these are going to work, because can be like jumping over them or diving under them, we can't just do it as a single collision. We have to actually determine if they're overlapping. So the difference between a collision and overlapping is this. The collision would be like the moment they touch, that's when it would trigger. Whereas if it's overlapping, it's kind of like an every tick event where the event will constantly try to trigger as long as they are overlapping each other. And that's kind of what we want with these river objects. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another event to obstacle collisions. We're going to do salmon, and we're going to say is overlapping another object. Okay, is overlapping, and we want to do overlapping the log. Okay. Now, the log is going to be a little bit different because the log is something the salmon could jump over or the salmon could dive under. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some conditions to this. That says he has to be not jumping and he has to be not diving. So as long as he's not jumping or diving, then the collision will trigger. So I'm going to add another condition. Another condition. We're going to do salmon. Okay. And then we're going to go down to instance variables. And basically what you want to do is Boolean variable set. So if you're typing it in, just type in bool, B-O-O-L. We want to know, is the instance variable set? Okay. And basically we'll do diving. Okay, so right now, you'll see it says salmon is diving. So we want it so if the salmon is not diving, that he'll trigger that. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on diving and we are going to invert it. Okay, so that basically means that the salmon is not diving. And then we're going to add another condition for jumping. We're going to do salmon. We can type in bool, is the bool variable set. And now we're going to do it for jumping. And then we are going to right click and we're going to invert it. So basically now what we're going to do is we are going to just copy the game over events into here. So I'm going to hold control and grab all three of these. And then after they're all highlighted, I'm going to hold control and drag them down to here and make sure that the events are on both of these, okay? So basically what this event is saying is if he hits the log and he's not jumping and he's not diving, then it will do the game over stuff, okay? But if I am diving, so if diving is true or if jumping is are true, this whole event won't trigger. So basically the salmon survives and nothing bad happens, okay? All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the tires. So let's add another event. So we're gonna do salmon, overlapping, and we're gonna do tires, okay? And the tires, we're going to make it so you can jump over the tires, but not dive under the tires. Okay, if you want to do jumping or diving, I guess you could do them both. That's up to you. I mean, I feel like you could go under tires or you could go over tires. So we could do both of these if you want to. So you could take whatever condition you want. I think the presentation tells you just to do jumping. So that's what I'm going to do. So Basically, they're saying you can jump over the tires but not dive underneath them. So if you want to do it like this, that's fine. If you want to add the diving in here as well, if you feel like you should be able to dive under the tires, then put the diving on here also. Well, I'll leave mine like this because this is, I believe, what the presentation said. And then all we do is we copy our game over conditions onto this one. We're going to do like that. Okay. And then we're going to do boat. So we're going to do say add an event to obstacle collisions, salmon, overlapping. Oops. Helps if I spell it right. Overlapping another object. We're going to do the boat. Done. Okay. And then for the boat, we're going to say that you can dive under it. So we're going to take the diving event and copy that here. So the boat, it makes sense that you can only dive under it because if you try to jump over the boat, you're just going to land in the boat and the fisherman's going to catch you. So that makes sense to me. So for sure, this one, just say, well, he's not diving. You're good. And then copy the game over events. Pretty easy. Hold control, click and drag and put them down. Okay, so that's basically what this should all look like. All of these events should be even with each other. Don't make this one a sub-event of this one. Every time I added an event here, I just said add event to obstacle collisions. So let's say you accidentally did that. So let's say this. So if yours looks like this is incorrect because this is saying that he's overlapping the tires and not jumping, and he's overlapping the boat and not diving, which this is never going to be accessible. Like this can never happen because you would have to be overlapping both at the same time. So if you had that issue where one of these got sub-evented by mistake, you want to grab it from the far left. And what I recommend you do is you just drag it above the other one and then they'll separate out. And then if you want it back in the correct order, just grab the one below it and drag that one above like that. Okay. All right, so there's that part. We're almost done already. This one hasn't been too bad, I don't think. All right, so now the issue is we haven't actually told the game when to set these to true and false. So we have to do that. So we have to go back to the original jumping event. So let's go back to touch controls. And I think it's event 10 on mine. Yep. So here's the jump comment. So we remember that the jump is here. And all we have to do is add an action here for the salmon. And I think we have to set Boolean. So if we just type in bool, we have to toggle Boolean and we're going to toggle jumping. Actually, let's not toggle it. Let me go back a step. Let's do bool. I think we have to set bool. Yeah, so let's do set bool. That's a little bit better because we don't want to toggle it because toggling it means that each time he does it, it'll change from true and false. So no, we just want to say we want jumping to go to true. There we go. Set jumping to true when I jump. And then we're going to set diving to true when we go down. So we're going to add an action here. Salmon, we're going to type in bool and we're going to do set Boolean. We're going to set diving to true. Okay, so this is when I actually dive and jump, it sets them to true. Okay. Um, then what we need to do is we need to set them to false when we finish. So at the bottom, here's where we finish them, right? We finish the animations. So then we're going to set, when we finish jump, we're going to set jumping back to false. So salmon, bool, set Boolean, jumping, false. Okay, and then when we finish the down animation, we're going to set diving to false. So salmon, bool, set Boolean, diving false. Okay. All right, there's one last thing we're going to do. So the slight issue that we have, well, let's just try it out really quick. So now you can see I can jump, I can go down. Um, you'll see that like if I hit something now, see how he goes back. Now we haven't programmed like the rest of the game over stuff, but that's kind of what happens. You see everything stops spawning. So you can see we'll try to get one object here, but you should be able to jump over under the log. So here's the log, right? So I can jump and see he went over and I can dive and now he goes under and I didn't get the game over. Whereas if I had hit the log without jumping or diving, then I would have gotten pushed back. So here's the iron. I'll try to jump it. I can't. So he gets pushed back. Okay. So that's what that should be doing. The issue that we're having is right now there's no restriction on how much I can jump and dive. And so we don't want the player to be in the middle of a jump and then try to go right into a dive. Like you have to finish it first. So what we're going to do is we are going to find the vertical swipe right here on event 9, and there's this else event here. Okay. What we're going to do is in order to allow the player to do a vertical swipe, they have to be not jumping and not diving for us to even allow this. So on this else, we're going to add two conditions. So let's add another condition, and we're going to do salmon, and we're going to check the Boolean. So type in bool, and we're going to do diving, and then we're going to add another one, and we're going to do salmon. We're going to look at bool. Is the bool set? And we're going to do, let me see, what did I do on the first one? I did diving, so then we'll do jumping. And then basically I want to invert both of these. So right click invert, right click invert. So basically all this vertical swipe code is I'm only able to do it if I'm not already jumping and I'm not already diving. So that's basically what that is. All right, guys, that is the end of section 4.